Star Wars Rebels, the show that was for kids but ended up being really entertaining and interesting to Star Wars adults as well. I'm going to give you my breakdown, thoughts, and just review of each of the seasons of Rebels. Let's start off with season 1. So I'm going to break down what I think of the main characters of this show, because that is really the star and the point of season 1, to establish these characters of Kanan, Hera, Zeb, Sabine, and Ezra. Now this is one of the coolest groups I've seen. It's such a cross-section of different characters and personalities coming together. It makes for a really entertaining show, and each of the characters have something to bring to the table. First up, I want to talk about Kanan. Kanan is one of the first Jedi we see post Order 66 of what they're doing and what they're up to. And remember that this first aired in 2014. This was before Rogue One, Bad Batch, all that extra content we have in this kind of empirical era of Star Wars. This is one of the first pieces of visual media we get to see of this era, and Kanan is one of those first Jedi we get to see. Obviously, he plays that wise mentor figure in this group, and especially to Ezra as well. His demeanor is very cautious yet calm. He's got that classic Jedi presence about him. Something I think Rebels do really well is establishing what Kanan's connection to the Force is. You know he's a Jedi, he has a lightsaber, he has the telekinesis, he's got that presence about him, but you can see that there's hesitancy and there's some room for some development for his understanding of what the Force is. This is really emphasized with episode 10 of this season, where it's kind of a story for Ezra to discover what being a Jedi means, and they find the Jedi Temple on Lothal. But through this story, there's actually a deeper meaning of how he thinks of himself as a master, and is he a master? He has a bit of dialogue with a Force presence of Yoda, and that is just a fantastic episode to watch. Like, if I had to recommend an episode for someone to understand who these characters are, especially for Kanan and Ezra, this episode is that one. Kanan is a very capable Jedi. We know that, but he has so much to discover about himself and trust and have confidence in himself with. So, of course, establishing this now in season 1 gives us that room to see him grow and understand more of that in later seasons. Paired alongside Kanan, I think they so perfectly made the character of Hera Syndulla. Her dialogue is great. It shows a lot of her character, her wit, her strength. She's very strong-willed, but she's very intelligent. She's not rash. To me, this season, I really see Hera to embody that kind of classic, original trilogy-esque rebel figure, and I think that gives such a backbone to the show. I think, and I'll get into this more about the episodes of, there's really fun adventures we get to go on, and we see those kind of fun Clone Wars style fun missions we get to go on. But I think it's Hera's drive to be a part of the greater rebellion gives this show a lot more drive and purpose than just being like a fun kiddie show. I think showing how strong and intelligent Hera is in this season makes for her character arc in later seasons really interesting, because we kind of unpack where she comes from in reverse. We kind of see her be really strong and important and just really forthright in this season of season 1. And then later on, we kind of unpack that and see, the broken life she's come from and the struggles she's been through. And she's just such a fantastic character, one of my favorites. Speaking of favorites, Sabine has to be one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters of all. She's a go-getter. She's a Mandalorian. She's skilled. She's intelligent. She's kind of angsty, and she's just so fun to watch. I think similar to Hera in the way that she's established as a really, really strong presence in this season. And that's kind of unpacked of why maybe she's a bit closed off, standoffish. That's kind of explained in later seasons, which makes for kind of, if we understand her now in season 1, this is where she's at now, it makes for those later seasons to be extra interesting. If we think about the other Mandalorians we've seen in Star Wars before Sabine, it's always been quite elusive. They're always quite alone, doing their own thing, and they have quite an interesting backstory, or we don't know much of their backstory. So it's pretty much the same thing with Sabine. It's like, where's her family? Where's her parents? Why is she part of the crew? All those questions kind of unfold later on, but season 1, she's just really fun to watch. She's just so smart. She's very skilled and talented. I think I want to be Sabine. I think that's what it is. So Zeb in this season, I think, is a lot quieter than the others. I think the others have quite a lot of screen time, dialogue time, development in this season. Zeb probably doesn't have as much, but in terms of establishing, we understand who he is. He's kind of got that passion, drive, and aggression, but it's in a good way. It's for the rebellion. It's for the right cause. I see Zeb's character in this season to be really key for us to kind of contrast against Ezra. So especially those earlier episodes of this season, it it was often Ezra and Zeb that were kind of butting heads, and they would butt heads until one of them would have to learn some sort of lesson, or both of them would learn a lesson of how to get along with each other. So not much happening for Zeb in this season, but when I talk about other seasons, he does have some interesting character development. Then we have Ezra. So Ezra's kind of the final main character we'll talk about. So in this season, he's kind of, I see this season is, we see it from the perspective of Ezra. He's the first face we meet. He's the first name we learn. And throughout the season, we do look at the other characters of Kanan and Hera's, It's mainly focused around Ezra's life and what he's doing. His character is such a classic, untamed, untapped potential of a young Jedi Padawan, which I think it's a classic, but it works. He's very naive. He's a bit of a loose cannon. But again, the episode 10 of this season, which I mentioned before, is such an amazing episode of just seeing what his connection to the Force is, and seeing how that's challenged. And there's a couple episodes in here which they quite quickly get into his Force abilities, his role with the Force and being a Force user, and that challenges Kanan and obviously challenges Ezra himself. One thing I really loved with his character is this perspective of his connection to the Force being really closely centered around animals and living beings and how he connects with those. That's obviously established quite early on in the way he can sense the loth cat and the are they gun ducks? What are those big, like the things in the shadows? Those big things. His connection to those and how he can relate, control, and interact with other living beings. That's a really big point to kind of go throughout the whole show. And I wouldn't be surprised if we probably will meet him in Ahsoka. Is that still a thing? And how has that manifested for him? Really likable character. I think he's really fun. He's a bit, rebellious, pun intended, he's part of the rebellion. He's a bit of a, loner, but I think he's quite likable, and I'm very happy that he is the perspective we are coming from in this show. Now, talking more about the story of season 1, I just want to emphasize that this is the first time we saw an on-screen portrayal of the Empire's reign. The episodic storytelling of the show is pretty standard, similar to a Clone Wars style, but I don't want to compare the two too much. They are quite different shows. I think the simplicity highlights that this show really can be for any audience. I think it can really be understood and enjoyed by young kids, but also for adult Star Wars fans that want to pull the meaning out of everything. I think we can analyze and enjoy this show just as much as well. Season 1 does revolve around that simple, stealing equipment and gaining intel, but I think that simplicity makes for us to understand the dynamic of the group more, because I think that's the key thing. By the end of season 4, at the end of Rebels, what do we get out of this show? We get these relationships, and we understand more about people's experience with, living in a galaxy where the Empire is reigning supreme at the moment. And that's only impactful if we really understand and connect with the characters. So season 1's quite simple, but I think it's for a reason. Additionally, we get really cool Empire characters like Agent Kallus, we see Grand Moff Tarkin, and we get that lady called Minister Marketh Tua. Didn't know that was her name. I don't know how. I felt like the whole season they never said her name. But the lady with the hat thing, she's kind of a good, just middle ground villain. The Grand Inquisitor as the overarching kind of Force villain is really nice in this series. He does die at the end, bye mate, but cool character, very cool character, and obviously I think he's there to do a lot more for Kanan and Ezra's kind of progression and development and understanding of each other and the Force. It kind of goes hand in hand, those characters of Kanan and Ezra, the Grand Inquisitor. Overall, I found the season 1 of Rebels to be really fun, entertaining, but enough of a hook that you want to know what happens to these characters. There is no question that these stories, these characters, and what we're seeing is maybe not in the Star Wars universe. It is so deeply Star Wars, and just to mention the design choices, they're so much based on Ralph McQuarrie's original drafts for different droids and Darth Vader and all those kinds of things, and that's a really nice just little background Star Wars touch. It's really key for us to understand these characters in a simple form, really basic storytelling, that we get what this dynamic is of the Ghost Crew, of these personalities, and understanding it now makes it so meaningful later on. It makes it so impactful. If you want to hear more of my thoughts of Rebels, every week I'm going to be dropping my analysis of each season of this show in preparation for the Ahsoka show coming out so very soon. Or you might be watching this after the fact and we might have already seen Ahsoka and you're just catching up on what Rebels is. Regardless, if you want to subscribe, you can be a part of more Star Wars community here at the Raeside. So make sure you lock in, get amongst there, come to a live show. We go live multiple times a week. So I hope to see you there. My name is Hannah, and always choose the Raeside.